Okay, great. Let's get started. I also want to say Max, he is another developer advocate at MongoDB. He is tuning in from the Discord channel. Max, you want to say hi?
Yes, hi everybody. I'm around. I will be asking questions as well to my friend Joe here to make it more annoying for him, and I will be watching the chat, answering questions and everything. So yeah, ping us if you have any questions.
Perfect. And let's see here. I think the stream is saying echo and can't hear well. Interesting. Uh, how can we fix this? Let's see.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, look good to me too. Stream says that there's an echo. Let's see here. Um, bump up the mic level. Could do that. Yeah, perfect. We'll bump that up. And we'll bump up max too. Great. Okay, cool. Echo's gone. Great. Cool. Um, and I think the volume should be better now too. Thank you so much, everyone. Uh, yes. Um, let's get started. So today, I was hoping to, or we're going to be talking about GraphQL and MongoDB. I want this to be kind of a introduction to GraphQL, and then also we'll be going into refactoring one of my older projects and updating it to use MongoDB Atlas in the cloud. Um, Oh, someone says they're static. I totally know what the problem is. Hang on. I'm going to move my laptop fan whirs like a jet engine when I'm streaming. Okay. I think that they're... Hopefully that should fix that static problem. Whew. Great. So GraphQL and MongoDB. But I want to get a quick just understanding or like figure out where you guys are at in the audience too. If you could post in the stream chat, like if anyone's had experience with GraphQL before, I'd love to hear just if who in the audience has played around with it before. Um, we'll wait a second, I guess. But while we're waiting for that to come in too, I'm also curious to see who here is like totally new to it. I think I'm going to be talking about GraphQL um, in terms of it's kind of like a basic introductory. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but I want to talk about why it's cool and why you should be considering it for setting up your APIs in the future too. Uh, GraphQL. Actually, you know what? I have a slide deck. We got a new follower. Thank you. Gabrielle Barreto. Thank you. Um, all right, let's see. I'm going to pop open one of my old slide decks. Um, okay. We're just going to do this uh, but so uh, I want to talk about why GraphQL is cool and why it's a massive improvement over a traditional REST API. So I used to work for a large e-commerce company in the US, but something that happened to us a lot was we'd get a requirement on the front end, and we'd be using some sort of API developed by a back end team. So, for example, we want to show recent orders that you had on this e-commerce site. Great. So we want to show that on there. But imagine that this API endpoint only returns like IDs, or we call them SKUs, of those items. They don't have like the name of it or anything else in there. Um, and if we wanted to show like more detailed order information, we'd have to either ask the backend team to start sending us that data. So we have a couple options. One, they can develop a brand new endpoint called like hydrated recent orders that has all the information. They could make a new name for it. They could use query parameters on it, like hydrated equals true, or it includes information in the header. You can do a bunch of information. But the point is that there's no standard way to do it. And B, you're fragmenting your REST API, or you're making multiple calls to a back end to get that data, which is really annoying. That's really annoying. It's slow because sending data over the network is slow. It's one of the slowest things you could possibly do. And it's really hard to speed it up because you can't speed up the speed of light. So you end up your server and your front-end client starts getting all these disjointed. Each team starts developing their APIs separately, and it gets really messy when you start adding additional requirements onto those back-end clients. GraphQL is cool. So the difference with GraphQL between the traditional REST endpoint is that you have a single API endpoint that you're hitting, and that's your GraphQL endpoint. And you're just requesting the data that you want from that endpoint, and you just get it back. It's one single request. You get back only exactly what you need, nothing more, nothing less, and you get to structure it any way you want. So as a front-end client, we no longer have to go back to the back-end teams, request additional information. We just can add that to our GraphQL request, and boom, we get all the data we need. It looks a little bit like this. Ooh, I want to just show this to you. It's a little animation I created for this. So with the REST endpoint, right? If I'm a front-end developer, when I'm making a request out, I typically have to make several different API calls out to several different servers or several different APIs from different teams. Those APIs go out and hit a bunch of different databases, and we get them all back in whatever order. Who knows? But it's all over the place. But GraphQL, you're making one single request. GraphQL is responsible for going out to the servers, getting the data you need, and then sending that back up to you. It's cool too because you get to, in the front end, you describe the shape of the data you want. So you no longer have to read documentation about what the data is, the order it's in, and everything. You decide the format that you want to receive that data back in, and it changes to whatever you need. Cool thing about that too is with data on the front end, you no longer have to, you don't get too much. Minimizing the size of the data payload over the network helps increase the time it takes to send the data over the wire. The smaller the data package, the faster you can send that off to the client, which is great. So that increases front-end performance. One thing I will note about GraphQL is that a common misconception that it's like a language, a database, but really it's what's the word? It's a schema. It's like it's like a specification. It just says how this endpoint should behave, but this specification has been now adopted by pretty much every major programming language out there, and it's being used today at a ton of different websites all over. Okay, so why do you want to use it? Firstly, it's declarative. Awesome. So I don't care where the data exists. I don't care what servers it's on. I don't care any of that. All I'm saying is I want this data. Give it back to me. Decoupling from storage, decoupling from servers, decoupling teams. As a front-end developer, I don't care where that data comes from. Just give it to me, right? I don't need to learn the history of each team, each API server. I just want to authenticate once and get all the data I want.
So you need to develop more as a backend developer to implement all the GraphQL things, right?
Yes, exactly. Which we're going to be going through today. Yes, for this instance we do. So for example, like in this example I'm showing right now, you'd have multiple different servers running multiple different databases. But GraphQL kind of sits on top of all that. When you're running a GraphQL server, someone has to go in and program, like, if someone requests this data, how do I go get that? Like, where does that exist? I'll show it in a second. When we dig into the code base. And structured, which is huge too. JavaScript communities have been complaining about this forever, but it allows you to validate and structure your data really well, which is awesome too for API development. You can give really detailed type errors if someone isn't using GraphQL correctly. So it's like, hey, I'm requesting an image URL, but I'm not, or I'm posting an image URL here, but it's not a string. You can send back really specific type data back to the user about the request they're making. or the mutations. One of the biggest things that helped us, though, was collaboration. I've seen people argue that you no longer need communication between teams, which is not true. But the biggest thing for us was GraphQL includes an endpoint. It's called graphical, and allows you to see the GraphQL endpoint in real time, exactly what it's serving up and what can receive from a client, which is amazing. So you always have up-to-date documentation. Which is the problem. I think I've worked at giant companies that each team has their own swagger. Sometimes it's out of date. Sometimes it's a README. It's all over the place. Sometimes it doesn't exist. With GraphQL, it solves that. It always shows what's available on that GraphQL endpoint at any given time. And other thing too, API versioning is actually considered an anti-pattern when you're using GraphQL. So instead of depreciating endpoints, which you still can do, what you do is you just keep them there and you add additional GraphQL endpoints or data you can serve up on there. So there's actually no more versioning anymore. But keeping all that data consistent and together, especially the documentation data, is super helpful. And all the different API endpoints being consolidated in one place. I no longer have to go search out which team maintains the separate API endpoints. It's all one place. I get all that data all at once. Okay. No more overfetching. Great. I'm not going to go into that too. But GraphQL, super cool, awesome, and it is very, very cool. Let's see here. So if you want to play around with GraphQL today too, you could check out, it's called Graphical. Let's see here. Do I have a thing here? No, I don't. Nope, we'll get to that later though. Okay, cool. So GraphQL.
And small question first.
Yeah.
I guess you have something as well to handle like login and privileges and what kind of query can be run by what kind of user.
Yes.
etc. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So you can do authentication. You can hide stuff unless you don't have You have to have the correct cookie or whatever in order to send that over. Let's look into the code a little bit. Yeah,
Cool.
Thank you, Tinder Busfarer. Thanks for the follow, man. Okay, so let's take a look at the code base here. I made a little, GraphQL workshop.
Can you make the console a little bigger, maybe, if you can use it?
Thank you, Max. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna post this on the Twitch stream too, and Caligula, man, pronouncing usernames is really, really hard. Okay, so I'm gonna post on the Twitch stream a link to the code base if you want to check that out. We'll be kind of going through it together, and it's posted in the panels below here too, if you want to check that out too. But basically what it is, I have a traditional REST endpoint and a GraphQL endpoint. And when you submit data to it, it's basically a sample to-do list that's saving to a local MongoDB instance. And I'm running this with Express and Node, just a little simple Express server. So let's talk about the traditional REST endpoint you're probably used to seeing. I have a single endpoint on here that's called to-dos, and it allows you to post new data to it, right? It's very simple. It's not a full CRUD app, but we're just submitting new to-dos and then reading all the to-dos from the database. But we're creating a brand new to-do item, and then we're saving that to the MongoDB database. That's basically all we're doing. And then we have an endpoint too that allows you to get all that data back too, which actually we'll show you in a second. But up here is a little bit more interesting. So this is the GraphQL endpoint. So I'm using a package called Express GraphQL. It's really amazing. It's super easy. It allows you it sets up a GraphQL endpoint for you basically for free. All we're doing is we're setting up a brand new endpoint called GraphQL, and then that GraphQL endpoint is being handled by the Express GraphQL package. I have some options and config options here I have set up. Graphical means that's like that documentation piece I showed you that allows you to access that. Yeah, pretty makes the output look really great, and then you can format error messages a little bit better to the server and to the client that's using it. Schema. That's right. So that's the most important thing. The schema is if you're running a GraphQL server, that's where you're doing the configuration to set up how that GraphQL endpoint works. So when someone hits that -GraphQL, they're sending an object over to you, and you have to. That schema is responsible for parsing that and kind of understanding what that GraphQL endpoint is capable of doing. And that's where actually all of our interesting server config stuff is happening. So let's take a look at that. That's not the one I want. Perfect. Oh, GraphQL. So I have a GraphQL folder and a GraphQL file. And Paulo Kauska. Boy, messed that one up. Thanks for the follow, dude. So schema.js, this is actually from defining how these objects work in memory. And GraphQL, it's you're typing it, right? I mentioned it's validated and structured. GraphQL is a bunch of native GraphQL types that work across programming languages that you can just pull in by default, which is awesome. They're very similar to the MongoDB data types that you save, which is handy. Also, too, there's a lot of connections to here, too. The input's coming in as a document, and MongoDB is great, too, because obviously you're saving documents in a document database. But, so here we go. I'm defining a to-do item, a to-do type, and you define the fields that exist on there. So I have a item ID, the item, which is just like the name of the thing, and the status, whether it's been completed or not. And that's a Boolean. I'm just using true or false for that's been completed. And the ID. MongoDB obviously saves things with a unique ID, so I'm just saving that too, and you can retrieve that for uniqueness on the front end if you need it. It's an option. Actually, maybe can I /graphical? Can I do that? Nope. Oh, let's see here. I think it's not running here. I gotta start up my server. So I'm just starting up my GraphQL server here, and I want to see if I can access the GraphQL endpoints. So it should be under just graphical. Let's see what happens. It's still building. And I can see that this graphical endpoint exists on here, so that's great. Cool. Cannot get graphical. Cool. Let's see here. Let's check a couple things out. One, I want to make sure... I'm listening to the wrong server. I'm going to change this to 3001. I'm going to restart the server here too.
Yeah, I think you are starting to lag a little.
That is very possible. And thanks for the follow. Is the computer getting slower? I wonder if like booting up my server is like slowing things down. Kuro, hiyo. Thanks for the follow. Okay. Still loading up. I'm going to quit a couple of my programs running on here. Hopefully that'll help speed things up here. Great. Okay. Error. I'm going to make sure we're loading up on here correctly. Great. That's perfect. Oh, I can't remember the error endpoints. Let's see here. Or the default graphical endpoint. It should just be -graphical, but Who knows? Just try that out again. Graphical. Ah, perfect. It's just GraphQL, not graphical. My bad. So this is that always up-to-date documentation I was telling you about. So this is called graphical. It's one of my favorite parts about GraphQL in general. But when you hit this endpoint, say I'm a developer on the front end, it allows you to format queries and view the documentation in real time of what's happening on the server. So I'm going to open up the docs in the upper right-hand corner here. And you can see here that we're defining queries or mutations. Queries basically, it's a get. Mutations are basically puts, posts, and deletes. But I'm going to show the root queries just to start simple. And on my schema, I've defined you can retrieve a single to-do or all the to-dos. And you see here, you can get it by item ID, and that's an integer. The bang afterward, that means that it is a required. It's like you need it. You can have optional queries on there. And if you click into that to-do, you can see even further about what is available to you. We have arguments, so we have the item ID, item, and completed. With descriptions, which is amazing. So, and the types that returns. We see int, string, and a boolean. So there's never any question about what it looks like, and we'll show this as we start changing it. You'll see that these are changing in real time with what's happening on the server, which is very, very helpful for front-end developer teams, staying up to date with the back-end developer teams. And Nick is talking about you can install Chrome GraphQL. Allows you to. Oh, great, perfect. So you can use that regardless of whether it's installed or not, too, which is amazing. So, okay. Let's go back into that schema real fast. So we're defining the to-do types, which we saw there in the documentation on graphical. And we're also defining mutation types. I'm not going to get into these yet. I will say, though, you can send in input from the front end and perform mutations, which I call them in GraphQL. I think the interesting thing, though, I'd still want to get to is on the queries. So let's stick with the gets. So if you're an admin of a GraphQL server, what you're doing is setting up these fields and kind of maintaining where they come from. And that's where the resolve comes in. So the resolver on each query type or on any mutation, basically you're telling GraphQL takes the input in. So it's like, hey, he's making a query for a to-do item. How do I go get that, right? Because GraphQL doesn't know where it is. It could be on a separate API, a separate instance. It could be on a bunch of different databases locally. But for me, my resolver is just running off of a local MongoDB server. And I'm just setting up a promise and saying, go find that item by the ID and either return or reject it. And then I just return whatever I find. Same with the to-dos, which is like getting all of the to-dos in the database. I just do a blanket find all in the to-do collection and return everything I find. Yeah, so the resolver, like I said, you can make making a separate fetch request out to a separate API. It could be going all over the place, but this only needs to be done once, and the GraphQL administrator is kind of responsible for making sure that this stuff is all being hooked up. But the teams that are using this don't have to worry about it. I will note here, I think REST APIs are still great. You're going to see it's an additional layer of abstraction and work that needs to get done. But I would seriously recommend this for large teams. It makes working with backend APIs that are like super all over the place with tons of like large companies. GraphQL really makes front-end development super, super easy, which is incredible. But yeah, it's totally agnostic, works everywhere. Okay. Just checking out this chat stream here. Awesome. Okay, great. So for today, what I want to do is convert this from making queries locally and convert them so that it makes them we're actually persisting the data to MongoDB instance in Atlas on the cloud. So instead of just going locally and looking in here, I'm also using Mongoose. I'm going to cut Mongoose out today. I'm going to remove the locally running MongoDB server, and I'm just going to use Atlas. You'll see here, I have a Docker file actually set up for this, which is like kind of confusing. But I basically had to use Docker previously in order to simplify getting MongoDB set up on here. Like MongoDB setting up locally, pretty simple, but I want this to be even easier to set up, and I can do that by just hooking it up to the cloud. That means I don't have to rerun all this database initialization every single time I run this workshop or get a new laptop, or if someone else out in the world wants to set this up locally, they can totally go for that too. I'm going to add one other thing about GraphQL. I prefer, there's a front-end client called Apollo. It wraps around any front-end client. Can work with vanilla JavaScript, Vue, React, or Angular. Doesn't really matter. This project, I'm not doing that. You'll see, this is kind of confusing. I don't want you to look at it too much. I'm manually parsing my requests into the GraphQL format from the front end. Kind of a pain in the butt. Apollo makes all that go away, and it makes it super easy to use. So it's just vanilla straight up components on the front end. Okay, and I'm using React on the front end too for this. Today, though, I'm not going to be making any changes to the front end code base. It should be working the same way. The only thing that's going to be changing is the data layer, which is great too from an MVC perspective, right? We can restructure the controller on here and the model without any impact to the front end, which is great. That's how you want to be building an MVC app to begin with. Okay. Great. Looks like we still got 26 followers on there. Awesome. I'm wondering too if anyone has any questions for Max or I. We're here to answer that too. But otherwise, if no one has any questions, I'm probably just going to get started with refactoring in this code base.
I do have a question. Where is the music?
Should I add it? I could totally get music playing. I wasn't sure if that was. All right, I'll add it. Let's see here. I know, I totally agree with you, Max. I love I love having music on streams too. I'm just gonna put on some like chill music here for just a sec, or for me and the listeners. Oh. I'm running on a MacBook Pro. Hopefully my computer can handle running Spotify and OBS at the same time. Okay, let's see here. I need to do a couple things. There we go. Okay, and where'd that go? Let's get some music. Max, what do you usually listen to when you program?
You have a question in the chat while you're doing this. I don't know. I usually listen to electronic music and techno and rock and roll and stuff like that, but it's just my own stuff. So
I can't hear Max.
so
It's something
pick your own side. Go for jazz or whatever you like, or just let the chat decide. I don't know.
Huh. Let's see here. Let's see here. Max, can you say something? Just a test.
Test. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
What did I break here? Broke something. Weird. Okay. Let's try this.
My sound went.
Let's play some music. I like listening to just like lo-fi hip hop beats when I program. sometimes like some synthwave and vaporwave sometimes. I basically anything as long as it doesn't have words in it, then I'm good to go.
Rebecca sent a playlist as well in the
I
channel.
still can't hear Max. It's totally. I blew up something with the audio here. I'm not sure what I blew up.
Can you hear me or?
There we go. Let's see here. Pull out some of that music. And why can't I hear any of the pass through? That's so strange. Weird.
Well, looks like everything is working right now. You have the music.
Perfect.
Can you hear
People
me?
can hear Max.
Can you hear
I'm
me?
the only one that can't hear Max. That's great. I wonder what happened. Something's. It's like my audio just went out. I'm gonna just troubleshoot this for just a second. If I can't figure it out, then
My voice is going to the channel. Like people can hear me. I don't know if you
it's gonna
can't,
be
but
fine. It'll be fine. Cool. Nick can hear the tunes. Awesome. That's great. I can't hear either. Something's going on with me. I don't know. Weird. That is so weird. Okay. I'm guessing I'm going to have to restart my computer to get the audio working, which I'm not going to do today. Maybe later.
yeah, it's gonna be perfect at some point. Maybe not today, but at some point we're getting there.
But I can't hear anything. Whatever. Okay. As long as everyone can hear me and Max and the music, great. I'm just gonna go for it. So, okay. So, Docker extension installed. Great. Boy, I just really don't understand. Audio engineering is like so confusing. I don't understand any of this stuff. But hey, maybe someday I'll be an expert at this. Okay, so let's go through and update this thing. So the first thing I'm going to actually do is, you know what? We'll start with just getting signed into MongoDB. So what I'm going to do is log in and just get a new collection started in the cloud. And then I'm going to start refactor my code base to start using that database instead of the locally running instance. Something I didn't mention before too is it's actually, the locally running database actually doesn't work right now. I didn't get it configured, but I don't know. It's fine. As long I can see the data coming in and out, and all I need to do is just get connected to this database, and then we should be fixed in the future. So I'm going to get logged into Atlas in the cloud, and let's get this refactored in here. I think, too, once we're digging in to the things, I have two-factor authentication running on here. So I'm just going to run this. I get a nice ping on my watch, which is kind of cool, my Apple Watch. And let's get signed in. I already have a database up and running. I'm basically just going to add a new collection to a demo database that I have, and we'll just start sending data up there. I'm going to have to hide the screen a couple times. Since we're dealing with the cloud, we do have to, we'll be running into, I have to enter username and passwords because you have to authenticate in order to receive, in order to access data in MongoDB Atlas. It's secure by default, which is awesome. Okay, cool. Let's see here. So we got a database here. I'm gonna just jump in here. I'm gonna check it out. We can see all of our collections. Since this one's running, it's basically, I'm just gonna, or this cluster is already created. I'm just gonna stick a new database on here for the sake of this thing. So database name, we'll call this, what do we want to call this? We'll call it GraphQL workshop. Let's call it the same name as that repo. And my collection name, so it's a to-do list, so I'm going to keep our to-dos in there. I use this a lot too, especially as a developer advocate. I make a lot of different projects, a lot of different demos. It's helpful for me to just name the databases, the name of the repos, and then each repo, I have all the different collections I need for each different each project I work in. So great. I have my to-dos in here, obviously freshly created, nothing in there. But I do want to, I do need to connect to it. So I think if I go back to overview, in the upper right-hand corner, they have this connect button. It allows you to connect in a bunch of different ways, including the shell. You can use MongoDB Compass, which is like kind of a GUI. But the thing we're going to be needing is connecting using our application. And it gives you basically this, this connection string, which is great. And this password thing is well, to replace that in here too. But it basically gives you direction to where it goes, which I'm going to pop that in here. So, you know what I'm going to do? What I usually do with these types of things is, especially with a refactor, I put everything into one code base, and then I start refactoring it out and splitting it out into logical pieces. I'm probably going to be putting this in its own database file in just a second. But for the time being, actually, you know what? Let's just do it. Whatever, let's just do it. So I have our old schema, our old Mongoose schema, which we're going to blow up here. I'm going to pop this thing in there. Great. And then I'm going to, we're going to need to connect to it. So first thing we need to do is actually install the MongoDB client on here. So we're using Mongoose before, but especially with newer versions of MongoDB, you can actually validate your schema from a database level, and accessing it straight from Mongo, I think, is actually totally fine these days. I don't see a lot of reasons to actually use Mongoose anymore. I used to use it all the time, but with all the changes made, I don't think you really need it anymore. So I'm going to install this as a production dependency, and npm install -s. Wow, that's big. And then I just have to.
Can you hear me now? Still not?
Hello. Let's see here. Can people hear me now? Great. Cool. We're back up. I still can't hear. I still can't hear Max. I think I got to do a full reboot. My computer, again, audio is confusing, but thanks for sticking around, y'all. Let's keep rolling. Okay. I just want to get connected up to Atlas and then change one thing over, and then hopefully we'll call that a day for call it a day for today. Okay, let's see here. Where do we end up? Oh, we were on the config.json. Okay, great. So one thing I need to do, I'm gonna get this password set over here. So I can't remember what I set over here. I'm gonna reset my password. You can't see what I'm doing, obviously, for my own safety. I can't let you see it, but I'm going to reset my password for this. I can't remember what password I set before. Edit. Okay. Let's see here. great. And then stream, I'm going to go into, well, you know what? I'm just going to move this over here so you can't see it, but I'm going to update the password field in there too then. And I'm going to shut that down so you can't see it, but trust me, it's in there. And great. Okay, great. So I got my password in there. What I'm going to do then is, you know what? I'm going to, how do I do this? Backtick. I'm going to do, what's the word? In Node, you do string manipulation using backticks. I'm just going to do bling brace or bracket and or brace and config.password. There we go. Okay, so I have my username and password, and that should work. So next, let's you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to set this up as a async await type function. So we're just going to wrap this whole thing with an async await. Async function, we'll just call it main. And in there, we're going to be basically, because I want to do these as async await based promises. So that's why I'm wrapping this with an async function here. Also, don't want to capitalize A for async. And then I want to instantiate a brand new client in here. So we imported our client, but we have to basically invoke that, instantiate a new instance of it. So console, just call it client is equal to a new instance of it, new MongoDB. Did I do that? Mongo client. That's right. And we just pass in the URI that we created up above. Okay, great. So we have our client. We have to basically wait for that to connect. So I'm going to do, since we're using async await, best way to do error handling with those is try catch statements. So I'm just going to basically set those up to begin with. Especially when we're first getting started with these, it's good to just kind of do a console.error, just to kind of catch anything that might pop through, especially when you're first setting stuff up. But we're going to connect. We're going to wait for it to actually go through the error and actually connect up to our Atlas instance. And then I want to do just a quick test to make sure that we're working correctly. I'm going to have it go ahead and I want to list out all the databases that we're getting back. So I'm just going to make a function called list databases. And this will basically just prove that we are, working correctly. So let's make this function now. Do this quick little test. Great. So list databases. Let's do, and obviously anything that goes from data or goes with a network is an asynchronous function. So let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. And we'll do function wait client. Great. And let's just do database list. That camel case. And let's go make a request from await. So we'll do client.db. We're going to access the admin collection, or database, excuse me, and we're going to list all the databases within that list databases function. Okay, and let's do, let's just console log database list. Okay, let's test that out. That should be good. I think that's good. Okay, so let's see what happens. Looks like I need to restart my server. Get that fresh data in there. And let's see if we can see our database list. So we should keep an eye on this reference error. Looks like there's this issue with our schema. Okay, that's fine. Let's go check that out. Database to do, bring that in. And then we're getting an error here. It says on spot's not defined on line 125. Let's go check that out. Okay. Apparently I typed in spot on accident. I think that's when I was trying to access Spotify and it was not going into my Spotlight. Take 2. Let's see if it works. Building modules. Great. Okay, it looks like I'm seeing an error here. That's good. Failed to connect to server on first connect. Great. Okay, so can't connect. Unhandled promise rejection warning. You know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a, in the to-do thing here, or in my to-do schema, I'm going to add a finally catch, just to kind of, because it's uncaught error to me, seems like something's not getting caught. Promises for me are always kind of tricky, making sure you catch everything, but I don't know. A finally is a good wraparound for everything to make sure it's working. Oh yeah, and then great. Let's. I forgot the most important thing. We never even invoke main, so I have to actually invoke main here. Main. Let's see if that works. Let's see here. Also, I would love to have this automatically restart every time I make a change with like a nodemon type thing. I can't remember if it used to do that or not, but it doesn't today. Okay. Mongo network error, failed to connect to server on first connect. Not found database. Okay. Great. That to me seems... It could also be like a... looks like a security thing potentially. Oh, I know the problem. Let's see here. So I think I need to whitelist my... network access here. So what's happening, I think, is, again, MongoDB's secure by default. So I'm going to just try connecting to my current IP address, see if that works. We got to wait for those changes to deploy. If that doesn't work, bad practice, but just to see if that's the issue, I'm going to open up to all IP addresses. And we'll see what happens with that too. But basically, it's to redeploy all your changes to the cloud. We'll see what happens with that. And then I always forget this line. Tips for writing optimized queries. Yeah, we'll put a pin in that. I'm gonna make sure we're gonna get connected first, and then we can answer some of the questions here in the questions. I do have opinions and thoughts on writing optimized queries. But, okay, let's test this out again. Failed to connect to server again. Unhandled. I'm going to try open this up just for... So you can do a temporary whitelist. I'm just going to do for a couple hours here, and I'm going to allow access from anywhere. Again, I think it's good security practices. It won't keep it open forever. But for the sake of troubleshooting, it opens it up a little bit to figure out what's going on. Okay. Redeploying the changes. Once that goes out, I'm gonna reconnect. I'm guessing that's gonna fix the change. It's kind of the nuke that goes and we'll fix the problem if there's any issues. Awesome. I love the chatter happening in the chat stream. That's great. Ooh, and Drake Dolpha, thanks again for the follow. Appreciate it. Okay. Context symbol. Mongo network error. Okay, so it's not a whitelist issue. Good to know. I'm wondering. Let's see here. Configure. I'm wondering if my URI needs to get updated. Let's see here. So I'm going to open this up again. Database access. I have me on there. That's great. Going to go to my clusters. Going to check out my here. I'm going to click the connect button. Make sure that I'm going to double check to make sure that my connection string looks okay, which I think it does. Oh, that's not the right one. I want to do connect your application. Yeah, that should be okay. Interesting. Don't know exactly. What's going on with that? Oh, yeah, so you can do, oh, dang, perfect. There's a full driver example for Node. You can pick the program language you want in there. But you know what? I'm just going to copy this too. When in doubt, what I do too when I'm having issues with something, I will just copy what works, which typically the examples do work, and see what happens. In the Mongo shell. We could potentially. Okay, that's fine. Let's just list databases. That's right. Database list. That's right. Okay, whatever. Let's try this out. So the change I made too was adding that new URL parser equals true. I'm not exactly sure what that does, but the documentation says that would work. Again, we can always make changes to it, but when I'm first getting started with something, the most important thing I can potentially do is just test it out. Another thing I'm going to do here too, I'm going to write a try-catch block around main. So it's potential that the error is escaping outside of it, and I want to just wrap it to see what's going on. Let's see here. Great. Okay, let's try this one more time. We're definitely having some promise issues and connection issues, so I want to make sure that we're seeing what's going on with that. The other thought I potentially have too is that it could be potential with my URIs formatted incorrectly. Ah, great. So we're catching something now. To do, it looks like await is the only valid on an async function. Yes. This is something on line 28. Oh, yeah. Right. Okay. Great. It's complaining about my syntax or my try-catch block I wrapped around my wait function. Oh, Mongo RC file. Thank you, Max, for adding that context. Oh, I think I know. Interesting. I think I know where the issue is actually coming from. So I'm actually still running Mongoose in my schema.js. I wonder if, because I'm not running a local MongoDB instance, I think if I cut that out, I should be able to access it. So I think that's my server.js. I'm actually configuring Mongoose, but I'm going to just shut that whole thing down. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. So I'm gonna gut that whole thing. We don't want to use Mongoose anymore. I'm just going to delete it. I think that the error I'm seeing is actually from it saying, hey, can't connect to Mongoose can't connect to the local instance of MongoDB, which I don't care about. I'm going to try that one more time, see if the error goes away. Interesting. So we're seeing that error from the finally block. Connect to Mongo is not defined. Great. We're getting closer. This is awesome. Okay. And where is that complaining? Server line 9. Ah, great. Oops. Basically, in my main, once it connects up, I just immediately connect to Mongo. But I don't need to do that anymore. So I'm just going to delete that. It's onions, right? We got our digging through our errors until we finally solve the problem. And to make it clear for the stream too, I'm really excited you guys get to see this stuff. I like showing warts and all of how we build out applications and how you see issues with them in real time. So we're still seeing that error. Okay, great. This database is not a function. I wonder if I spelled something wrong. Always possible. You know what? So I'm trying to connect to just list all the databases. That's kind of my hello world. I am going to just change my hello world since that is throwing an issue. I have Mongo Shell connected. Oops. And I'm just going to copy their thing here so we can, full driver example. I'm just going to try to connect up to our collection. Let's see if we can get any data back from that instead. So instead, I'm just going to do collection DB. I'm going to call this GraphQL workshop, and our collection. Whoops, I got to spell workshop correctly. Let me double check to make sure my collection name is, I think it's to-dos. I want to make sure I get the capitalization correct though, so I'm just going to double check. Yep, capital T to-dos. Right. Okay. Perfect. So I'm just going to gut out this thing here since we're not using it. And let's just see if it can connect straight up. I'm going to console log that collection. All right. Take 10. Let's see if this works. Developing's hard, isn't it? Okay, still see that error. That's interesting. Oh, here we go. Great. That must be when it first gets started up. Hey, this is great. So we're seeing data coming back from MongoDB. This is amazing. I can actually start doing work on this thing. So I could start doing queries on here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could do like a .find. It's going to be empty at this point. But point is, though, and we do have a linter on here. This is great. So I'm going to just run a little query on here, see if that works. But I think we're connected up now. So the problem, what was the problem again? Oh, my query was incorrect for accessing all the data on there. It could have been my permissions were incorrect for it, but just going to start with a simple like to do on here too. So cool, awesome. Yeah, great. So we access everything that we need on here for that collection. That's amazing. Great. Okay, so we're connected. Yes, so let's see here. Let me, now that we're connected, that's kind of that's all hello world. We can start doing work now with Atlas. And I'm going to start moving some of those GraphQL schema data off to Atlas. I wanted to answer some questions, though, before we move on. Let's see here. So it looks like Max is handling some of these in the chat, but he was asking about backups. Someone's asking about backups. Who is that? Kahel28. Hope that's right. Asking if MongoDB Atlas does backups. And in fact, it does. Max was putting on there, too, some additional information if you're curious about how those work. Yes, backups are super easy to configure on MongoDB Atlas. You can run them, of course, locally. It's a little bit more work. You have to configure it all. But yes. I think Max posted some information about backups, too. Someone earlier, too, was asking about optimizing GraphQL queries. So there's a bunch of stuff you can do with that. So obviously, the smaller the data payload that's sent over the wire, the faster that works. Using GraphQL, it's an additional layer of abstraction. And with any additional layer of abstraction, there is a performance cost. Just think of it, it's like more code it has to kind of go through before it actually serves that data up. So there is a performance hit on that. And the closer you can keep that data to, and GraphQL is only as fast as how fast your databases or the separate APIs are serving up data to GraphQL. So if you still have to go over the wire to halfway around the world to get that data, the client's going to wait until the data comes there. So you want to make sure your data is close as possible to the GraphQL servers to minimize the amount of time it takes for you to retrieve data from your separate databases. And all the database best practices and API best practices exist on the layer below GraphQL to make sure you're optimizing speed for getting that data to GraphQL as request it. You can do additional things too, like caching on the GraphQL layer. Caching data doesn't change very often. It's hard to cache things like customer data or whatever. But you can cache at the sub API levels and also at the GraphQL levels. Tools like Apollo actually do caching for you on the client and the server for free. You can configure it, though, on your own if you want to get nerdy about it. But Apollo is actually amazing out of the box. You just click it's an option, cache equal true, right? And it just does a lot for you out of the box. Yeah, so to recap, abstraction costs you can never pay back. But you can do things by lightening the load, having the data API or the databases, sub-databases and APIs serve up the data really quickly to GraphQL. And you can cache either at the sub-API level or at the GraphQL level. But all those will work. And PyDjango, thank you so much for the follow. We appreciate it. Okay, cool. Let's see here. All right. Let's see here. We've been streaming for about an hour and 30 minutes. I might just what I'm probably going to do is just send up a one single request to our, one post up to our database, and we'll call it a day for today. So now that we're connected, we're good to go. So what I need to do now is basically export this so I can use this function outside. I need to basically be able to, I need to do work with this. And the work gets done in here. The work gets done in this connect, right? We're able to do work on that collection, all that stuff on there. So let's see here. How do I want to do this? I want to export this, and then I'm going to be moving this find off into our schema, and then I'm basically going to be making a post on there. So let's do a module.exports, and we'll just do export. We'll just export our invoked main function on there. So main will connect, and once that, and it's an asynchronous function, so we're going to wait for that connection to finish, and then we can start doing work on it. And we're going to be returning, I want to just return the connected client. So let's do return the connected client. Okay, so I'm going to move this out, because nothing after a return statement works. And then I'm going to go to my schema, which we're bringing in that to-do Mongo connection, and we can start doing some work with it. So, as mentioned earlier, I'm just going to be adding a single post. So that's under mutation for adding a to-do via GraphQL. So when we're adding an item on here, we're defining what it is, what the description of it that appears in graphical, and then you define the arguments that you need to receive from the client in order to create that brand new to-do item. We have the ID, which you can override with. It's optional. We have the actual item. That's like the name of the to-do item. Go to grocery store, pack, whatever, clean apartment. And then lastly, the Boolean of whether it's been completed or not. You can set defaults on here too, but so before we have a promise that just gets handled here, but the resolver, but I want to do Mongo. We'll do, let's see here. We'll just call it Mongo client. And we're going to wait for that Mongo client to get completed, and then we can move on with it. So, one thing I'm worried about here is okay, great. Is making sure that this because it's an asynchronous function, we might need to make this thing this internal function a asynchronous function, which I don't know if this will work. Maybe that will. Maybe that will work. And we want to await for that to be connected. Actually, you know what? You know what I'm going to do? Because I want to connect it right away. So let's just Mongo client. Let's see here. Maybe I'll just do it. Maybe I'll do it in the server. It's similar to how I was doing before. Just when the server gets started up, I want to just immediately go ahead and connect that database. I'm going to check in with the feed here. Okay, great. So I'm going to go to my server, and I want to just import in that client. And then we're just going to immediately connect to the MongoDB the second our server turns on. Doesn't make sense for me to wait until we are, every single time a request comes in to reconnect. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm just going to, let's see, we're already in there, it looks like. Great. Server, database, to do. Great. Mongo client. Exports app. And then do I need to, I think I need to, it's already invoked, great. So I need to invoke it, and I just can run it. This might give me some async issues. It always takes me a second to kind of figure out, get my promises around. I may have to wrap an async around this function. We'll see what happens. But let's check it out. What I'm worried about is I think I need to put an await on here. I'm pretty sure I do. Yeah. Let's see. Mongo client is not. Mongo client is not a function. Oh, it's right. It's already invoke it. Let's see here. Let's just, maybe I'll uninvoke it and I can invoke it on the, there we go. And then we'll go back to our server.js and I can invoke it in there. I'm going to wait for this to start. I'm a little nervous about this, but let's see if this works. Because whenever you put an await in a function, you basically need to wrap it with an async. So it takes those promises all the way up. So I think I can do this here, though. I'm going to just try this out. Oh, it sounds like I'm lagging. Uh-oh. Great. So we should be connected. And then that means when we're finally in the schema, it should already be good to go. So Mongo client should be good to go. Schema. So the thing is, I need to pass that client around. Oh boy. You know what? We'll get that figured out. I do want to invoke in here. The point is, though, because I need that client to exist in one place so I can pull from over and over and over again. So maybe I'll just have it initialize here. And then it can be used afterward. Yeah, and they should be able to pass that around. We'll see how it goes. God, promises are so confusing. Looks like I'm... Let's see here. What could be causing that issue? Okay, let's see here. I'm checking to see if I'm back in action. Yeah, kinda. Let's see here. Looks like I'm having some. Yeah, perfect. Looks like it's back. I don't know what's going on with my computer. It's having trouble keeping up today. It was doing fine last time, but we're running some issues today. Let's see here. I only have about 10 minutes left here today. But yeah, actually, I might wrap this up. So I'll probably continue working this on other streams. If you have any questions, though, feel free to reach out to Max or I on Twitter or wherever. Twitter's actually probably the best. But I'll probably continue streaming with this too. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening with GraphQL. So this is not the last time you'll see us talking about this. But yeah, especially with refactoring old projects too, which is something I love to do. Perfect. Max just posted his Twitter on the chat. But yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. Hope you learned something new. So glad to see you. And yeah, hopefully we'll talk soon. Oh, perfect. Thank you for posting my Twitter. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Is that Brent? Thank you, Brent. Thanks for sticking through with us with the lagging issues. We appreciate it. And let's see here. And okay. All right. Bye, y'all. Let's see.